The way to actually do it would be to go across the country and go to a lot of theaters, and that's how it started.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro. Here this week with Rebecca Pahle and Chad Kennerk joining us in our news panel to cover all the latest news and highlights in the world of theatrical exhibition. And in the feature segment this week, I'll be speaking with the Ankler's Matthew Frank, who went on a road trip to visit 58 theaters across the country between New York and LA, a massive road trip where he got to see what the movie-going experience is like for moviegoers that aren't in LA or New York. He went to all the theaters in between, ate more concessions that is probably, I don't know if healthy is the right word, but let's say advisable for anyone. But I'm not sure. I mean, Rebecca, how long do you think you could subsist or sustain yourself off a concession stand diet?
So we're thinking like a Super Size Me type doc, but just surviving on movie theater food.
That's essentially what Matthew had to do in this road trip. So, like, how long do you think you last before you hit a wall?
I could make a month.
A month? That's pretty good. That's solid. Chad, on your end, how long do you last?
I think it depends on the offerings, right? I think if I'd go towards like probably the healthiest option as like my main thing, and then every once in a while try something that's maybe a treat or something different that I don't get every day at movie theaters near me.
I'm doing popcorn for at least one meal a day.
See, you would have to floss like religiously is the one thing I'm finding out.
Yeah.
Is like flossing and popcorn are an important duo moving forward. At least that's what my periodontist has to say about it. We had an interesting weekend here at the movies. I don't know if you guys really got to catch anything. Obviously, 28 years later, The Bone Temple is out. We'll be speaking about that box office performance in a second. I know neither of you guys have caught it yet, but Rebecca, you did see Primate, Killer Monkey movie. Chad liked it. It's a by the book horror movie, as I understand it.
Yeah, I liked it. It was a January horror movie. I enjoy that it was actually a dude in a suit rather than some janky looking CGI. It was gory, so I dug that one. Lagging a week behind on my January horror releases. So by the next episode, hopefully I will have seen Bone Temple, even if I have to drag Eric there because he did not like the previous 28 years later.
He might not like this one. It's divisive. I mean, people that like it love it. I don't know if you've seen the social media reaction. It's very impressive for the people that do like it. But I mean, going from a $30 million opening weekend last summer for 28 years later to a $15 million 4-day holiday opening weekend in January. Not the best sign that a lot of folks are there, but this is the sort of movie that I think is going to get cult status, this weird trilogy we're halfway through.
The question is it going to, how long is that going to take? And will Bone Temple still be in theaters? Will it be able to get that sort of bump from the WTF word of mouth crew?
I'm not sure. I mean, the first 28 years later title, the one that came out over the summer, what did that like open to 30, ended up topping to 70 domestic? That's a pretty low multiple for a movie of that size. I'm not sure. But Sony, man, I mean, they've been having a really rough go at it. Last couple of years, we were talking about it, looking at their slate this year. I think it's going to be a big, big CinemaCon for them because the biggest thing they announced at last year's CinemaCon is like, hey, we've got like 4 Beatles movies coming out in 5 years. But until 2030 or whenever they're coming out, sit tight.
Yeah, and the year before that was the Crunchyroll was their big.
Yeah, was their big presentation. Really, other than buying Alamo and going all in on anime, it's been a little bit quiet from them. Also, I mean, Spider-Man's going to be a huge title for them. It's going to be, I think, a make or break title as far as 2026 is concerned for Sony.
I mean, with all of this Warner Brothers chaos going on, yeah, it's okay for Sony to have a few years of low drama, I think. I'd rather have that than, though apparently now we are potentially maybe getting 45-day windows if/when. What's the news that broke over the last week there, Daniel? Not news so much, interview quotes.
Yeah, we had a story break in the New York Times where Ted Sarandos, in an interview with that publication, said that they were committed to 45-day windows, which is, I mean, a complete reversal of things he told investors right after the first acquisition attempt was made and approved for Warner Brothers. We've seen a lot of reporting, unofficially, not confirmed yet, that puts the window for Netflix, Warner Brothers at 17 days, which more or less aligns to what we've seen from Netflix this last award cycle, where they gave titles either a 10-day window or a 17-day window. But then all of a sudden, boom, New York Times story, questions asked, and the guy says 45. Honestly, it's the same situation, I think, that Paramount Skydance is in. I think Sarandos and Ellison will say anything they have to say to get this done.
Yeah, it feels like damage, or like not damage control, but it feels like a
strategic.
It's strategic. It's strategic. Yeah. I mean, there's another quote in the interview where he said, "When we buy the studio, we'll be releasing more movies together than we were separately." I mean, that's a great thing to say, and we all hope it comes true. But at this point, and how can he know that?
No, it's so hard to tell. I mean, we also have that, number of like 30 movies theatrically released between a combined Paramount Warner's that I don't really buy. Warner's put out how many movies? 9 movies in 25. No movies in Q4. Basically, since one battle after another in September. I think we have to wait until when? February? March? What's the next big Warner's title?
Wuthering Heights.
Yeah,
that's right. Valentine's Day.
That's still, it's a wait. So saying you're going to put out more movies,
and we'll run that business largely like it is today with 45-day windows. He says one of the things that surprised him about all the kind of pushback was that the general economics of the theatrical business were more positive than we had seen and we had modeled for ourselves. It's a healthy, profitable business for them. So that's the nicest thing. It's a healthy, profitable business. It's the nicest thing he said.
I was confused because everything this man said before he bought a studio indicated it was not. But now
it's almost like you can't trust the sound bites from this man.
Wow, fascinating. The type of guy you can just trust and buy everything he says at face value.
Yeah, I guess to play devil's advocate, is there any conversations there behind the scenes with this bid where he's gotten maybe some info from Warner Brothers that we're not privy to, that he's like, oh, okay, this maybe is changing my mind a little bit. I don't know.
Possibly. And that's why you don't open your mouth until you know what you're saying. If you're going to go out, criticize an entire sector adjacent to your primary business line, it might come back and bite you in the butt. And I think that, honestly, to be fair, that might be what's happening. I think this dude's trying to grow his business. I think strategically, Warner Brothers makes sense for Netflix. Let's be honest about that. They've got a realistic chance of acquiring it. And lo and behold, all that heat you brought to the table, all that crap you've been talking for nearly a decade, if not a decade, comes back and bites you in the butt when you have to not only sell investors, but you have to sell board members, you have to sell regulators, and you have to sell movie theater owners. Yeah, turns out if you just come in and do work and business with everyone, which to their credit, they are with these like special one-offs like the Stranger Things thing and the K-pop thing.
There's one question answer combo from this interview that I really liked. He was asked basically if he believes that theater owners believe that he is in this for good reasons. And his entire answer is, quote, "I've got a great relationship with theater owners."
I'll let our the readers of Box Office Magazine and the listeners to this podcast react to that with the smile I know they have. Sure, absolutely. I will say other people at that company have a very good relationship with exhibitors. The top, I think, has some convincing to do. And maybe that's what we're seeing right now. Listen, the flip side is he can go in the New York Times in this interview and say the type of stuff he's been saying, the type of garbage he's been saying for the last 10, 12 years. And he didn't do that. He changed his tune. So, yeah, I mean, we're pushing back a little bit because, of course, we are. We have to push back. I mean, how many failed promises did we hear from the Disney Fox bit, right? Oh, no, Fox is still going to be its own entity, operating much the same. Really, they put out maybe 3 or 4 movies a year, on the 20th Century Studio side. Granted, great movies. Creatively, I think they're doing a great job. And Searchlight, great team of people over there.
Not very many movies.
To do what they used to.
Poor Things was so good. It won them the Oscar just a few years ago, and they haven't really had much.
We need more. We need more. I think Searchlight's being handled great. I think 20th Century Studios is being handled great. I just think they need more titles into theaters. And I would love to see Disney do that, but it's tough. It's tough operating a massive studio, putting out more than 20 movies to theaters in this day and age. And that's why I don't necessarily buy what I'm hearing from either Ellison at Paramount Skydance or Sarandos at Netflix right now. Ultimately, whatever's going to happen is going to take place, and we just have to adapt to that reality. But right now, it just seems like one big PR campaign, and I don't know how much news value there is beyond the sound bites.
Yeah, agreed. We're just going to have to see how it plays out, and I'm still concerned for when those sound bites mention, quote, theater owners. Which ones are they talking about? Are they talking about the big chains? Are they talking about the art house theaters? Are they talking about independents? Are they talking about everyone? Obviously, it's a very complex marketplace, studio relations wise, for smaller cinemas as it is now.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's also a business on the rise right now. Year over year, it's going to be a difficult Q1 in 2026, as we all anticipated. We predicted this quarter would end at around $1.6 billion compared to last year's $1.45 billion in Q1. So far, we're around 20 to 25% ahead year over year on a year-to-date level. Yeah, we had a disappointing opening weekend from 28 Years Later at the Bone Temple. We kind of anticipated that. Tracking had really gone down. But that's the power of Avatar, Fire and Ash that we really needed to come in and on a slow weekend with an underperformer claim the top spot at the box office. Now, I think that's going to be difficult but not unattainable for Avatar to make it 6 in a row, because right now, Mercy from Amazon MGM, the first movie sort of kicking off a full theatrical wide release slate from Amazon MGM in 2020.
They're definitely kicking off the marketing campaign, because I'm seeing trailers and commercials.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Currently, we have a $10 to $15 million opening weekend here in North America for Mercy. And Rebecca, our colleagues over at Pearl and Dean, who are now contributing to our forecasting in the UK and Ireland, just put out their latest forecast for Mercy in the UK and Ireland market. What can we expect both opening weekend and domestically from Mercy in that market?
So they're saying the domestic total they expect for Mercy in the UK and Ireland somewhere between £1 and £2 million. With the opening weekend, they had that somewhere between 400 to 800,000.
And that would be, I think, a solid performance where we are in the schedule right now. I would be not necessarily surprised if Avatar makes it 6 in a row with the number one movie in the marketplace. That's more or less what we anticipated. It's going to be slow going, really, until we get to that mid-February point where other movies in Q1 really have to step up and play a factor. Obviously, by the time we get into March, you've got Hoppers from Pixar, and you've got Project Hail Mary at the end of March, where things, I think, brighten up a little bit. But yeah, slow going here this Q1. I haven't been to the movies for a while. I basically finished all my 2025 for your consideration screenings and screeners, took a little bit of a break. I did see, however, for the first time since middle school, I watched Face Off at home with the...
I was just thinking...
I got the Kino Lorber 4K Blu-ray. My God, man, I had not seen that in 25 plus years. Incredible.
Incredible. Well, Chad, you were just saying on the work chat earlier today that RoboCop would be a great Broadway musical, which it would. And I think Face Off is, I've been saying this for years, Face Off needs, imagine what you can do with like the seagulls flying around whenever something really dramatic happens. You can do like the face switches.
Yeah, so much.
That's a fine film.
No, the movie is both much better and much worse than I originally remembered.
Yeah, that's Nick Cage.
But here's the thing, Nick Cage sells it. He sells it, right? But Travolta makes the movie work. The Travolta performance really makes the entire thing into a cohesive whole. And it's a really good John Woo movie. I can't recommend it enough. I will say this because it was rated R. So, of course, I didn't see it theatrically in 1997 when I was 12. But I did wear out my VHS copy. And VHS resolution is very different from 4K Blu-ray resolution. The stuntmen are extremely obvious once you watch it now. I'm sure if you watch a really good print or if you see it, in good tech at home, you will notice that it's a completely different person doing the stunt.
I love that evolution towards 4K means all the stage makeup is really obvious.
Dude,
Like the old
it's
Twilight
the
Zone
worst
episodes.
stuntman like replacement.
You just have to go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was egregious. Is the one thing to the point that it's comedic. It's just, the movie's bonkers. If you guys can find either a rep screening of that, or if you've got good home entertainment set up at home, I highly recommend
Who
it.
distributed that?
I think that was Paramount. But yeah, another era of filmmaking, but the type of action movie that I wish would be made more often. A staple of my movie going back in middle school.
Speaking of middle school, I think that's the first time I watched Face Off. It was like a sleepover at a friend's house.
That's the best.
That's how you watch it. That's how we all watch it. It's the middle school friend's house R-rated movie that you sneak in. That's actually how I watched the first two Scream movies, which we're going to do, by the way. It's a heads up for you guys. We all have to watch all the Scream movies now because we're doing one of those Scream franchise episodes. I'm getting prepared. I already rewatched the first two. But yeah, it's been a very big like throwback week. I don't know if you've seen it on social media. There's this big thing where you have to post your pictures from 10 years ago.
Hell no.
Yeah, 2016.
Hell no.
Absolutely not. Pass. Hard pass. Not interested. Not doing
I don't like it when they pop up on my like throwback and I have to see them. Like
No, frightening. No, absolutely not. We're focused on the future here anyway, so we don't have to look too far into the past. But let's go to our main feature segment now with the Ankler's Matthew Frank as he goes over all of his anecdotes visiting 58 movie theaters in his cross-country road trip that happened in October of 2025. A great conversation with Matthew as we just delve into some of those challenges that local cinemas are facing and just his passion for the movie-going experience that resulted from this road trip that is coming up after this break.
Boxoffice Pro is launching a new initiative to recognize the most unique movie theaters in the world. The Boxoffice Blue Ribbon Awards will recognize cinemas in two categories: Best New Builds and Best Renovations since 2020. Submissions are due on Sunday, February 15th. Visit boxoffice.com/Blue Ribbon to learn more and submit your cinema today.
And we are back here on the Box Office Podcast with this week's guest, Matthew Frank, who recently went on a road trip to 20 states and visited 58 movie theaters during one of the worst months at the box office on record. So he got to hear an earful from a lot of you listening here today. Matthew Frank's coverage can be found on The Ankler. This was a collaboration that The Ankler did with Letterboxd in a great series that we'll be talking about today. Matthew, welcome to the podcast. Are you well rested now after 20 state theaters?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And no, I still haven't recovered. It's we're talking in December, and I'm still catching up on sleep, and I still feel I can still feel the contours of like the road under me. It's anytime I'm like laying down, it's really it's still there. Yeah.
So let's talk about this project and how it came to be. How did you come up with the idea of doing a cross-country road trip, visiting cinemas? How did you come up with a beginning and end point? And how did you pitch this to your editor?
Yeah, so those are all fair questions. It started, so we have a newsletter, The Ankler. We have a new newsletter called Crowd Pleaser that, as you mentioned, we're doing with Letterboxd that goes out to their audience as well. And the newsletter covers audience trends in film going and just the movie industry a little bit broadly. And so someone at the company had pitched for one of the issues to be me going to like one theater in LA and, during the trailers, like asking some people like, oh, what do you think of this or whatever. And I liked, but I was thinking like, well, it's not really representative. If you go to like one theater, talk to like a couple people in LA, who say like, oh, I love Nicole Kidman, whatever it is, like it might not be quite as representative of the larger populace. The way to actually do it would be to go across the country and go to a lot of theaters, and that's how it started. And and it was fun to be able to take a big swing like that for the first one. And so it was from Los Angeles to New York. The debate was whether to sort of go like along the south and then up, or like go diagonal. I ended up going south and then up a bit because you could still kind of hit some of those Midwest states if you sort of straddle along the borders kind of well. But anyway, so it was 2 weeks, Los Angeles to New York.
Well, let's go into the process of selecting which theaters you spoke to, because I looked at your reporting. It seems that you were able to get very well ingrained in local theaters in small towns and small communities, which is such an important part of this industry. But I didn't see too many multiplexes, not too many modern or new theaters. How did you come up with a list of theaters that you picked in this road trip?
Yeah, so part of it was by necessity, part of it was by choice. So, especially in the first half of the trip where it's going through like the Southwest and like, through Texas, Oklahoma, there's just not, at least the route that I was going on along the highway, there just wasn't that many multiplexes. So, just by the nature of it, I ended up at a lot of independent theaters and small town theaters. But it was also by choice because it's interesting to me hearing, their stories where, if you go to an AMC or a Regal or a Cinemark, it's a lot of like, well, not that many people are coming in, but like the lights are still on and we don't know, corporate, yada, yada. At these small town theaters, it's very like they move along with like the way that the industry is going. Like when you have, a lot of them referenced a couple of like Mortal Kombat 2 moved like when I went on the road, it was announced that it would move back like a couple months. And that's like a real like that news comes out and that hits them like in a big way and they have to like recalibrate and it's like a real thing. So I thought that was important for the Ankler and Letterboxd readership, to sort of hear from those perspectives where it's really, visceral for them, all these changes in the business. And it was fascinating too, just hearing their stories because a lot of these people, they either their parents started in the business and they inherited it or it was friends or whatever, or they decided personally, like, I want to open a movie theater. And, a lot of them have been rocked by COVID and it was, and streaming and just the, all the downstream effects of that. So, yeah. So, I mean, it was fascinating hearing from all of them.
And it's an interesting sector, I think, of the movie theater industry right now, where we're seeing two parts of it try to survive and thrive in different ways. A lot of the investment going into the industry is going into new builds and renovations that include things like cinema entertainment centers, that include premium large format. And that's, yes, a huge part of the focus on the corporate, on the chain side. Absolutely. Your focus, I would call it maybe a little bit less representative of the global or even national picture, but definitely representative of the local independent picture of what we're seeing here in the movie theater industry, because these are the theaters that, frankly, are at risk when a movie changes in October. It was not only Mortal Kombat that you mentioned, we had Michael scheduled to come out in October as well. Had we had either of those, it wouldn't have been the worst October in a generation. And as you note in your coverage, some folks had to lay people off in these cases. Some people had to close the theater in some instances because of those attendance problems. When you move one, let alone two major titles, and these were going to be maybe the two top earners in October, Lionsgate's Michael and Warner Brothers' Mortal Kombat 2, you end up in a situation where, yes, the publicly traded circuits, yes, the chains can find a way to survive, but the local exhibitors, there's a real impact at the community level to these decisions.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, there's a real local impact and you can feel it. You can feel it in just the product that they have. But I would also say, I mean, you mentioned that, the chains can kind of adapt and can, find ways to make it through. It's also these local theaters that are finding ways to persevere. Like, so many, when I was on the road, it was so many theaters that were doing rep screenings and, getting really creative with those or doing or changing up the way, like a lot of theaters had these free kids nights or, whatever it was, like a lot of really like bold, ambitious swings that you can take when there isn't product. I mean, I mentioned the reporting, but I mean, obviously so much comes from concessions. A lot of them for, when you're not coming to watch a movie in the theater, you can Uber Eats or DoorDash or come get, take away popcorn from the theater. And then, the theater is still benefiting from that a little bit, but it is a challenge when you don't have, the product to justify it. And even in October, I mean, even the stuff that was supposed to be big that stayed on the calendar, Tron did nothing. The Smashing Machine was a dud. Like it was really like slow times for just the releases. And it's hard for these theaters to, find things that can sort of keep them going I mean, every theater I went to was like, yeah, we're just, counting our days till Wicked. They all knew like it was,
right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's something we spoke about at this podcast. It was always going to be a struggle with that October calendar as soon as your two main titles move. And you see the impact during that road trip at a local level. And I want to take a second and congratulate you, because I've been working in this movie theater bit since 2013. I've been working covering the trade press since 2009. You're the only person in that time from a trade publication that I know has taken the time to do the research, to show up to the theaters, to speak to the theater owners without a headline already pre-written. And that's so difficult to find in this business, the level of understanding that you were able to have and the investment you put in, not to say I'm the smartest person in the room, but to talk to people in these communities and learn about what they're going through and learn how to talk about this industry where a box office hit or failure doesn't really reflect on how much money a studio makes. It also reflects on, can I pay my staff next weekend? What do I have to do to pay my vendors at the end of the month? And those are the consequences of the box office. It's not really about a movie being profitable or not. It's about so much more than that.
Yeah, no, thank you for those kind words. Yeah, it was really important to hear these voices because I think, Hollywood and, the Ankler goes out to a lot of people, in the industry. And it was important, I thought, for them to be able to really hear from these people that are at the center or, at the center of these decisions. And not only is it something where, it affects them directly. And that was really important to reflect. But the U.S. has lost what is it, like 4,000 screens since before COVID. Like when you keep having these closures and when you keep having these places that so many of them are fighting to stay open, but a lot of them just can't keep the lights on. So it's important for the industry to understand like it's these short-term sort of decisions that kind of affect them a little bit, but it affects these places a lot. And if you keep draining them, eventually once the product is back, there won't be the theaters to display them. That might be a stretch. Hopefully, that doesn't happen, and there will be enough product and enough theaters. But it is scary for a lot of these venues. It really is.
Well, it's not just about having the movies come out. It's making sure you can book it in your hometown. You visited theaters that I'm sure requested to have a film play in their theaters during this period, and that was made unavailable to them because of a release pattern decision made in Los Angeles or New York.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually the story that we just published today kind of covered that reality where it's this, I'm sure I don't have to explain it to your listenership, but like, these holdovers are just like this practice that people don't really understand is happening, but like really affects these theaters. Like there's this one concrete example where Universal has Wicked, which they mandated that all these theaters play for 3 weeks, which, they're happy to do. It's a successful movie, but the third weekend of Wicked was also the first weekend of Five Nights at Freddy's, the other Universal tentpole movie. So if you wanted to play the first weekend of Five Nights at Freddy's and you have a 1 or 2 screen theater and, you might already have Zootopia in there or whatever, which also has its own, mandates, like you wouldn't be able to play Five Nights at Freddy's. It's these like weird, sort of antiquated release patterns that, are just, practices that studios employ that I don't know if Hollywood quite grasps the effects of. And is just tough, especially, when I went on the road in October, it was, you had to play Tron for 2 weeks. And it's like, that is a real gamble for these theaters that if you took it, a lot of times it was not like you suffered. Like it was not, It was not easy.
Yeah, I think it's great to have folks like yourselves be able to make these connections, put in the time, put in the work, put in the effort to understand this industry at this level. Because, like I say, sometimes the reporting on box office or on the industry tends to just be in terms of reducing a movie to its profitability for a studio or to a publicly traded company, or just talking about the major circuits on the exhibition side, when really it's a local community story where these decisions have big repercussions. Now, to turn things a little bit more on the positive side, because it wasn't just doom and gloom, you not only got the opportunity to listen to movie theater operators, 58 of them across 20 states, you also got to visit 58 different movie theaters. Let's talk about the highlights of your trip. Was there a concessions item or a certain trend or tendency, even an auditorium that you thought was exemplary from this sampling of 58 cinemas that you visited?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's funny because I did eat a lot of theater food, just the way the trip was structured. I wanted to make sure I hit as many theaters as possible. So that meant, not spending time at restaurants or wherever it was. It was, trying to eat while I was in the theaters watching a movie. So the first half of the trip was a lot of hot dogs. The second half of the trip was, I call it my chicken tender bender. And the best concession item I had on the trip was chicken tenders and fries from Legacy Theaters in Bristol, Tennessee. I don't know if any of your listenership has been there, but the manager, Zach, told me that they make it really, really well because unlike a lot of places where they'll just stick it in the oven and then it'll come out and then they'll just, serve it. He'll cut it in the middle and then see like how it is. And then like, if it needs more, he'll put it back in. That was what he said it was. I don't know. It worked. So, cause it was very delicious. And I knew it was a good sign when I was waiting like 10 minutes for him to get it together with the food. But yeah, that was great. And then favorite theater was probably, I have a penchant for like the old timey theaters that are, have just a lot of seats and are big and just you walk in, you're like, what? I thought this was a town of like 3,000 people. So there were a couple like that. Lyric Cinema in Spearman, Texas was great. And I featured in the story and just has this huge screen with like curtains on it. It was great. Shelby Theaters in Conshohocken, Ohio, which is like a twin theater, and it's like at the back of this outlet mall, and you're like, well, there's not going to be a huge theater in here. And you walk in, and it's just like massive, and the screen is big, and it was great. I had a special place in my heart for those.
Now, everyone has a different place in the auditorium that they like to sit. I'm usually close to the front row, right in the middle. What's your favorite spot in an auditorium to sit down?
You kind of stole my answer there. Well, like right behind the first couple rows, like a little stand where I can kind of put my feet and there's nobody in front of me, but it's enough space where it's like, I compare it almost to like, at a basketball game, right? You want to be sitting ideally like first row, but like a football game, you do want to be like in that second level and be like first row right there. That's, I think we're aligned on that being the ideal spot.
Now, this happens to me as an editor all the time. I'll assign a story, I'll get a number of words, and it'll break my heart having to cut a portion of the story. I'm sure you went through an experience like that when you filed this to your editor at The Ankler. What part of this story didn't make it to the final version?
Oh man, that's a sore subject. Yeah, it was originally like double the length, and it was double the length. I had written basically a book, and a lot of it got cut. A lot of different themes about, and you touched on it earlier, but and even at these non-chain theaters where it's talking about the PLFs, talking about like just how big of an impact that has had, both in the minds of consumers and for a lot of these theater owners who are trying to upgrade for it. And in that light, how a lot of the renovations shake out. And there's some of that actually in the story that we published today in The Ankler, but a lot of like just how renovations end up in this holding pattern of like small ones, and then it doesn't lead to the growth that you need. And then, no more renovations. And then there's also in that same light, the whole thing with recliners where, you want to have the recliners. It's huge for the business, but you have to, decrease your capacity by half. It also costs a lot. And, even if you're an independent, you still, you might be beholden to someone or you don't have the money yourself. So it's a real challenge in that regard. And then also the experiences part. So, I went to Synergy and, down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they have a couple of venues, and Pell City premiere in Pell City, Alabama. And it's basically these, Dave and Buster's, with like a movie theater holed up in the back. So like, and that's a big part of, I think it was a $2.2 billion investment that's supposed to go into, all these theaters over the course of the next couple of years. And zip lines and mini golf and pickleball are a big part of what that's supposed to be. So yeah, that's an interesting trend for the business. And also there's a lot of color. So there's a lot of road trip color that got cut. In the intro to my story, I talk about this haunted theater in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And, we were able to touch on the ghosts. There were a couple of ghost stories that I loved, but that did not see the light of day.
Floor. That's always a pity. Well, yeah, the PLF thing that you mentioned a second ago, Matthew, is just such an important factor of this, because you're seeing a lot of the marketing for these tentpoles being directed towards the premium experience. And if you're an exhibitor and on the poster it says see it in IMAX, you're basically advertising people to go drive 30 miles away from your theater to see the movie somewhere else. And you have to put that poster in your auditorium in some cases. That has to be so frustrating for a lot of the local communities you spoke to.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It definitely is for these theaters that, even relative to like, the chains, like non-PLF screens, they're like kind of behind the times. So it's an even bigger challenge than to try to advertise something like Avatar coming in December, where it's like, you're being told you have to see this in IMAX. You can't see it in IMAX. You should see it in 3D. And it's like all these things where a lot of these smaller theaters just can't really compete with. So yeah, it's frustrating for them. For a lot of these small theaters, it's, they're far enough away from the chains that it's like they just have the distance advantage. But yeah, it's a challenge for these theaters when the filmmakers are trying to tell people like there's a real intentionality with like, you have to see the movie this way. This is the optimal way. And the residents of a town or, the people in a city, aren't able to do that or have to travel a distance to go do that. And to your point, it is just more and more movies and filmmakers that are, sort of employing that, that sort of verbiage.
You're marketing a movie to a minority of screens, and I think that does hurt an industry after a certain point. And have coming up the Netflix release of Greta Gerwig's Narnia, only in IMAX theaters, coming up in Thanksgiving 2026. So this is going to be, I think, a big talking point for the industry moving forward. Now, I want to sit here and gush and fanboy about the movie-going experience. I know you love it. You're committed to it. I am as well. But there's also constructive criticism that I think we can propose. As someone that drove across 20 states and saw 58 theaters, what's the number one thing that an exhibitor can do to improve the movie-going experience for consumers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it's something that, I don't know if I have a perfect answer to. So many of these theaters are trying their best to, make ends meet and just don't, have the bandwidth to try to like introduce something new. But what I found to be true across the board and especially the owners would really emphasize and would take action to do, what I was interested in was the idea that you have to make it like an experience and not just, you're coming to the movies. Now, whether that means something like Synergy does, or you have a big arcade or whatever it is, that can be part of it. But also part of it is, in the lead to my story, I talk about this theater in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, where the owner, Anne, for her rep screenings, she goes and like, when it's Pulp Fiction, she gets water guns like they used to, like they had in the film where she'll, for Monty Python, she'll have like the, like the little ceremonial, garb. Like it's to really, make it where the challenge more than ever is like, do I sit on my couch for free and watch something that looks high quality, that is, it's not more or less what you can get at the theater, but, for no cost or for no additional cost, it'll do for a lot of consumers now. The challenge for exhibitors is how do you make the experience something where it's worth coming? And that's something that, the studios or the people making these movies aren't able to do or aren't able to provide. They're just providing the movie. It's, it's up to the exhibitors to be able to create either an atmosphere or, something around that. I mean, in Barstow, California, I talked to the owner there who, when there's a big kids movie, he'll bring like a face painter, like, all these different things to really make it where, again, I mean, it's a depressing state of affairs when it's like, well, it's not, you can't just do the movie, but like, that is what a lot of these exhibitors express to me, where it's, you can't just say, hey, we have this movie, come on down. Like that doesn't move the needle for a lot of consumers who are just now accustomed through COVID, through streaming, to just sit on their couch and watch it there. So, yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. That is Matthew Frank, the associate editor from The Ankler. You can read his article, Ghosts in the Balcony, a cross-country trip to 58 theaters fighting to survive, on theankler.com. And you can subscribe to his newsletter, Crowd Pleaser, which is a collaboration between Letterboxd and Ankler, over at their website. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. And a big thank you to Matthew Frank from The Ankler for joining us here on the Box Office Podcast. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and share these episodes if you want us to continue doing what we do. New episodes of this podcast come out every Thursday. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.